The stars were supposed to be silent. Captain Elena Ruiz had always believed that. Born on a Martian mining colony, trained in Earth orbit, she'd spent most of her adult life riding the void in vessels that thrummed with calm and purpose. The stars didn't scream. They didn't roar. They didn't throw fits of violence. Until they did. The Wanderer had been running silent scans of the Perseus Rift, charting dark matter eddies and cataloging anomalies. When the debris storm hit, it came out of nowhere, jagged black shards of something ancient and angry. Sensors hadn't even finished chirping before the first impact tore through the starboard hull. Atmospheric stabilizers failed instantly. Gravity warped. Sparks flew. Elena's voice was calm as she gave the abandon pod command, but everyone knew the truth. The damage was too deep, too fast. Life pods wouldn't clear the gravity well of the strange blue-green planet rising to meet them. So they rode it in. Controlled crash, nose first. The ship groaned and shrieked as it punched through the upper atmosphere. Panels popped loose, coolant hissed, and somewhere deep in the engineering bay, something big tore free and slammed against the bulkhead like a drop truck. Lieutenant Merrick swore as a plasma relay flared and fried half the cockpit's control surfaces. The whole ship stank of ozone and terror. Then they hit. The jungle shattered beneath them. Thick, glassy trees cracked like crystal columns, and the Wanderer skidded across the forest floor before embedding itself in a ravine. Metal screamed. Lights died. Then silence. Elena came to, blood trickling from her brow, emergency lights flickering amber overhead. Around her, groaning crew dragged themselves from crumpled seats and shattered consoles. No one had died. Not yet. That would change quickly if they didn't act. They set up base camp just outside the hull breach, an ugly clearing scorched by the ship's trail of ruin. Tents were thrown up, gear salvage, rations counted. They had power for maybe 3 days. Life support was functional in some sections, dead in others. The main transmitter was gone. The worst part, the air was breathable. It mocked them. Close enough to Earth normal to give hope. Too far from any help to make it matter. Elena rubbed her temples, looking over the damage. "We need to stabilize pressure in Deck B," she said. "Merrick, can you rig a patch?" He gave her a look. "With what?" "We've got 3 sheets of sealant foam, a half-melted polymer weld gun, and some emergency blankets." That's when Marcus, the ship's systems tech, stepped up holding something in one hand. It was gray, worn, fraying at the edges. Duct tape. The real stuff. High-bond industrial adhesive. Earth-made. Probably smuggled aboard in someone's personal kit. Forbidden under fleet protocol, but everyone did it. "This might do," Marcus said. They stared. It shouldn't have worked. It shouldn't have held. But within 20 minutes, the breached pipe was sealed, the ventilation shored up, and the oxygen levels were back to survivable. Marcus stepped back, hands on hips, and nodded like a man who'd just performed heart surgery with a steak knife. Elena blinked. "How long will it hold?" Marcus shrugged. "Could be 5 hours. Could be 5 days." Elena looked at the shimmering tape job and exhaled. "Well, let's hope it's the 5 days." From the tree line, unseen by human eyes, crystalline figures watched. Towering shapes of light and refracted glass, the Kilari had emerged at the sound of the crash. They moved without sound, harmonic energy pulsing through their limbs as they studied the strange beings who had fallen from the sky. They saw Marcus press the gray strip onto the broken pipe, saw the hiss fade to silence, and saw the air clear again. To the Kilari, it was not repair. It was ritual. Not technology, but magic. They turned and vanished into the jungle, their harmonics whispering one phrase again and again, rising in tone like a hymn. The gray binding has returned. And far above, the stars were silent once more. The second night on the planet was quiet, too quiet. No animal calls, no wind, no movement in the dense crystalline forest that surrounded the wreck of the Wanderer. Just an eerie, almost reverent stillness. Lieutenant Merrick joked that the planet was holding its breath, but no one laughed. Alina didn't sleep. She stood outside the camp, gazing at the tree line, listening. Then she heard it. Not a sound exactly, but a feeling, a faint, high-pitched resonance in her chest, like someone dragging a finger along the rim of a wine glass, only inside her lungs. She turned and scanned the trees, and that's when she saw it. A shimmer. No, a figure, tall and faceted like living glass, shifting colors with the moonlight. It stood motionless, watching her. Others emerged beside it, each one slightly different in shape and hue. They didn't glow exactly. They refracted the world through themselves, a living spectrum. "Captain," Marcus called softly behind her, breaking her gaze. She turned, and the figures were gone. But she knew what she'd seen. By morning, the others had seen them too. "They don't make noise," said Merrick, scanning the trees with a motion tracker. "But they're out there, and they're close." "I caught one on the drone camera," Marcus added, pulling up fuzzy footage. The image showed a still frame of one of the creatures, its arms outstretched as it studied the outer hull. It never touched anything, just stood there, humming faintly. "They're not aggressive," Alina said. "We crashed into their world. They haven't attacked. We don't fire first." Merrick looked unconvinced. "They've got numbers. You don't stand still in front of a fire unless you think you can control it." That evening, they came closer. The humans were mid-repair on a damaged fusion cell. One of the coolant lines had a hairline fracture, and the spare parts were already spent. Marcus, ever the improviser, wrapped the leak in 6 tight layers of duct tape, muttering, "We're gonna need another roll at this rate." The second the tape pressed down and the hiss stopped, there was movement in the trees. A single figure stepped forward, fully into the clearing. Its body was translucent and multifaceted, a structure of living crystal, and something flowing within, like slow-moving light. It stood upright, taller than any human, and emitted a low, melodious hum. The crew froze. Fingers crept toward tools and sidearms, but Alina raised a hand to hold them back. The being raised its arm, long and tapered to a prismatic point. It pointed at the taped coolant line. Then it pointed at the humans. Then, slowly, it placed one shimmering hand on its own chest and pulsed with a sudden deep violet glow. Marcus whispered, "Did it just thank us?" "I think it just worshipped us," Merrick replied. The creature backed away without a sound and melted into the forest again, the hum of its body fading into the background. Moments later, more of them emerged. 5, then 10, then 20, all watching. Silent, glowing. Wordlessly, they spread out, encircling the clearing at a respectful distance. Alina stepped forward, hands raised in peace. She didn't speak. There was no translator for whatever they were, but she bent down, tore off a strip of duct tape, and held it up. The Kileri, the name they would learn later, flared with a burst of harmonics. Not loud, not shrill, but full of layered tones that resonated deep in the bones. A chorus of awe. They didn't know what it was, but they had seen the tape fix broken metal. They had seen it bind the wounded. And now to them, it was not a tool. It was power. The gray binding had returned, and the gods who wielded it had names. Alina, Marcus, Merrick, human. The third night brought a storm. It rolled in just after midnight. No warning, no gentle breeze to announce it. Just a sudden pressure drop and a blinding flash that split the sky in half. The crystalline trees swayed with eerie creaks, bending but never breaking, as lightning danced from branch to branch like living fire. The humans rushed to secure the camp. Tents snapped, gear skidded, and a hastily erected wind turbine, their only reliable source of auxiliary power, began to rattle under the strain. "Guidelines are slipping," Merrick shouted, trying to brace the turbine's mast with a steel rod. Another gust hit, and the turbine groaned. A support beam cracked. Then it collapsed. The metal tower slammed to the ground, crumpling like a soda can. Sparks leaped from the exposed wiring. The impact tore a thick power cable clean in half, and one end sparked against the muddy ground. "No, no, no," Marcus hissed, scrambling toward the damage. Half the camp flickered and went dark. Alina swore under her breath as the primary generator kicked in with a weak sputter. "We've got 3 hours of backup," she said grimly, watching the rain come down in sheets. "If we don't get that turbine online, we're flying blind." Marcus already had his kit open. What was left of it? No welders, no clamps, just a few scrap rods, some wire, and one last partial roll of duct tape. He tore off a strip and began wrapping it around the severed cable ends, binding them tightly in overlapping layers. The rain made it slick, but he worked fast. Fingers practiced from a dozen field repairs back in the belt. "Insulation's shot," Merrick warned. "You'll fry it." Marcus didn't stop. "No time. If we lose those batteries, we lose heat, comms, filtration. We'll be breathing jungle mold by morning." He tied off the last strip, covered it with a thermal wrap, and jammed the whole assembly into a dry plastic crate to shield it. Then he looked to Alina. "Do it." She hit the switch. There was a heartbeat of silence. Then, power. The lights flared back on. The systems beeped to life. The turbine blades, now propped upright with sheer human stubbornness and scavenged poles, began to turn again. A roar of wind swept through the trees, and with it, harmonic echoes. They weren't alone. Dozens of Kilari stood just beyond the edge of the clearing, their bodies pulsing with soft blue and gold light. They had gathered during the storm, drawn by the collapse, watching from the shadows. Now, as the lights returned and the machine stirred again, they stepped forward as one. Their hums rose in perfect synchronization, a harmonic wave that washed over the clearing like a song. The lead figure, the same one from the previous night, stepped close. Its body glowed with inner light. It moved to the still sparking crate, reached down, and bowed. The others followed, not just watching now, worshipping. Alina exchanged a look with Marcus. He stared at his taped-together repair, then at the beings kneeling before it. "They think we conjured the storm back into the sky," he whispered. "No," Alina replied quietly. "They think we commanded it." From that moment forward, the camp was no longer a salvage site. It was a shrine. The Kilari brought offerings, curved stones that hovered in midair, flowers that changed shape depending on the pitch of a human voice, beads of living light that swam through water like tiny fish. They laid them near the patched turban and the taped cable like gifts to gods. And the humans, out of parts and nearly out of ideas, started to understand something strange and undeniable. To them, duct tape was a tool. To the Kilari, it was a miracle. By the 5th day, the jungle clearing looked less like a crash site and more like a marketplace built atop a shrine. The Kilari came in waves now, tall, silent beings gliding over the underbrush, their bodies shimmering with every step. They brought more than just offerings. Now they brought questions, gestures, tools of their own, things they wanted fixed. Alina had resisted at first. She wasn't about to let the crew turn into a sideshow. But then they brought the cracked star metal shard, denser than lead and lighter than air, buzzing with internal energy, and laid it beside a ruptured casing from their own crystal-based devices. They wanted it fused. Merrick tried welding it. Nothing worked. Plasma warped it. Lasers reflected right off. Even cutting it was impossible. Then Marcus walked up, rolled out a strip of duct tape, and pressed the two broken halves together. It held. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't scientific. But it held. The Kilari core rippled with delight, singing a high-frequency chorus that made the Wanderer's outer hull resonate like a tuning fork. Alina stared at the scene, Brilliant alien tech literally stuck together with Earth's cheapest miracle and realized something important. The Kileri had never invented adhesives. They molded. They sang matter into shape. They fused at the atomic level. But once something broke, they discarded it. Their culture was built on transformation, not repair. Until now. By afternoon, an official envoy arrived, 30 Kilari, adorned in woven strands of what looked like crystallized smoke, carried on grav platforms that hovered a foot above the jungle floor. Their leader, taller, more rigid in posture, and lined with glowing runes, presented the crew with an offering unlike any other, a cube of solid memory crystal, swirling with internal light. Marcus reached for it, but Alina stopped him. Let's hear the terms first. The envoy turned to its escort and began harmonizing, a five-toned resonance that triggered the cube. It floated upward and projected a glowing image midair, diagrams of duct tape, simplified human tools and roles, dozens of rolls. Then came their offer. In exchange for one full roll of duct tape, the Kilari would give one levitation stone, capable of lifting 200 kilograms, 2 solder-reflective cloaks, temperature-regulating fabric unknown to human science, 4 breath shells, each able to store up to 10 hours of clean air, and unrestricted access to what they called the first pattern repository, a kind of living library. Alina blinked. They're offering us a technological motherlode for tape. They don't want the tech, Marcus said quietly. They want the concept. Binding, mending, holding, permanence. I'd trade my boots for a roll at this point, Merrick muttered. We're down to 4 strips. They made the trade. The next day, the Kilari returned with duplicates of the tape, their attempts to replicate it. Some worked. Most didn't. One melted the lab table. Another wrapped itself around Marcus's arm and wouldn't let go for 3 hours. He didn't mind. They're trying, he grinned, flexing his fingers. This is basically a development lab now. The humans began teaching, not in language, too different, but in actions, demonstrations, repairs, fixes. They patched a Kilari canopy, torn by wind. They reinforced a collapsing wall with a lattice of tape and alloy rods. One Kilari fell and cracked its lower limb. Marcus splinted it with a carbon stick and bound it tight in tape. By morning, the Kilari walked again, and every tribe that witnessed it began binding their own wounded the same way. Some began carving the gray strip pattern into their skin. Others sang new chants mimicking the sound of a roll unfurling. Tape had become a symbol, a force, a philosophy. And all around the humans, a new word echoed in harmonic tones. Gray weavers. The crew didn't correct them. By the 6th day, the humans weren't just fixing things. They were teaching how to fix. The Kilari gathered in circles around the camp each morning, humming with anticipation. Their children, smaller, flickering beings barely a meter tall, mimicked the humans with endearing clumsiness, pressing together strips of flexible plant fiber and humming in joy when they stuck. Marcus tried not to laugh when one of the younglings proudly showed off a tool made entirely from tree sap and leaves held together by an imitation of duct tape made from crushed bark. They're getting the idea, he muttered, but we really need to show them proper materials. That's when the Kilari elders returned, with a challenge. Alina stepped outside to meet them. The lead elder was etched with swirling lines of sapphire light, and beside him floated a new artifact, a twisting helix of cracked crystal held together by a loose spiral of failed Kilari adhesive. The structure pulsed weakly, its energy fading. They want us to fix that? Merrick asked, squinting at it. Thing looks like it powers a city. They're not asking, Alina replied. They're testing. She turned to the crew. This is a trial. Marcus stepped forward without hesitation, his hands already checking the helix for heat, resonance, damage depth. The fracture ran through a power channel, one that clearly cycled some form of ambient energy. The wrong fix could overload it. I can try binding the fracture with thermal tape layers, he said. Offset the pressure and stabilize the loop. We've got 2 strips left, Alina said. No backup if this fails. Marcus didn't hesitate. Worth it. The crew watched, holding their breath, as he slowly wound the last of their precious tape along the damaged spiral. His hands moved with the quiet precision of someone used to improvising with nothing. He pressed the final edge down. For a moment, nothing. Then the helix pulsed once. Then again. Light surged along its curves, brighter and brighter, until the entire structure lifted off the platform and began rotating gently in the air. The Kilari burst into song. It wasn't chaotic or loud. It was precise, layered, hundreds of tones harmonized into a single rising wave of reverence. The repaired helix floated above them, casting spirals of light onto the jungle canopy. The elder stepped forward and placed one shimmering hand on Marcus's shoulder. Thakfinar, it whispered in a resonant tone that vibrated through Marcus's ribs. Alina turned to the nearest Kilari child and pointed at the artifact. What does that mean? The child hummed the same word, then mimicked the motion of tape being pulled and wrapped. Marcus frowned. Is that my name now? No, Alina said slowly. It means he who binds what was broken. The crew stared in stunned silence. Word of the trial of binding spread fast. The Kilari who witnessed it began crafting ceremonial sashes of woven bark, sap, and strips of early adhesives. They wore them proudly, symbols of those learning the way of the Grey Weavers. By nightfall, the jungle was alive with the soft harmonics of training circles. Kilari elders practiced wrapping shattered stones. Youths repaired snapped branches and proudly hummed praises when their makeshift bindings held. And at the center of it all, the humans stood among them, not conquerors, not invaders, but teachers, builders, binders of the broken. I can't believe this is happening, Merrick whispered. They're building an entire culture around duct tape. It's not the tape, Alina said, watching a Kilari child patch a cracked sculpture with trembling hands. It's the idea that broken things can be saved. Marcus nodded slowly. That even the worst damage can be mended, with enough patience, skill, and stubbornness. In the shadows beyond the tree line, more tribes gathered, Kilari from distant regions drawn by the legends forming in real time. And they came not to conquer, but to learn from the Grey Weavers. The celebration didn't last. On the 7th morning, the sky above the jungle dimmed, not from weather, but from the slow descent of a massive shape overhead. At first glance, it seemed like a cloud, but clouds didn't move like that. They didn't pulse with deep, angry red. The Kilari saw it first. Their harmonics fell silent. Whole clusters of them retreated into the trees, fading into the crystal undergrowth as if melting from fear. Alina watched the shadow pass overhead and felt her stomach tighten. That's not one of ours, Merrick muttered, gripping the handle of his plasma cutter like a weapon. From the edge of the tree line came a new sound, a sickening, warped version of the Kilari resonance. Dissonant, hollow, and then they emerged. These were not the elegant, luminous Kilari the crew had grown used to. These were warped, fractured beings whose crystalline forms were jagged and burned. Their lights flickered like dying stars, and their harmonics twisted with something dark and wrong. Their limbs were fused with blackened metal, as though something had tried to repair them without understanding how. The fractured ones, said a young Kilari near Alina. His voice trembled with barely contained fear. They were us, but they were remade. By whom was the question no one wanted to ask. The fractured ones moved with erratic, twitching motions, as if their limbs didn't belong to them. Their chests pulsed with mechanical grafts and corrupted energy cores, and behind them hovered small, insect-like machines, humming with the same dissonance. They're not just damage, Marcus said softly. They've been experimented on. The fractured ones did not attack. Not yet, but they stepped into the clearing, their attention locked on the repaired helix from the Grey Weaver trial. One reached for it, its hand a twisted mess of fused crystal and scorched alloy. Alina stepped between them. The creature hissed, and the hum of the surrounding drones rose in pitch. Marcus moved beside her, tape roll already in hand, but Alina raised her arm to stop him. "Not yet," she whispered. Then the creature did something unexpected. It pointed to its own chest, where its core pulsed erratically. The surface was cracked, half covered in failed attempts at synthetic repair. Adhesive scars, melted clamps. It wasn't attacking. It was asking. Marcus stepped forward. "Let me try." "No," Alina said. "We do this together." The crew gathered, and for the next hour, under the tense watch of both the fractured ones and the hiding Kilari, they began to work. They peeled away the warped clamps, cleaned the crystal core, and, for the final step, Marcus applied a custom-layered patch, insulating mesh, a thermal pad, and the last reinforced strip of duct tape across the fracture. The core pulsed once, then again, stronger. The dissonance in the creature's body softened. Its hum shifted, becoming less warped, more Kilari. And then it sang. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but a clear, desperate harmony that echoed across the trees like a child remembering its name. The jungle held its breath, and then the Kilari stepped out from hiding. Slowly, cautiously, the younger ones approached first, offering sap strips and woven ties. Tentatively, they placed them around the limbs of the fractured ones, covering jagged wounds and broken joints. A quiet peace settled in the clearing. They were abandoned, Alina said softly. Left broken. Someone tried to fix them with violence. But they didn't need that. They needed this. She held up the empty core of their last duct tape roll. The Kilari word for it now echoed through both the healed and the fractured. Fakarin. The binding. Word spread like fire through the trees. If the Grey Weavers could mend the fractured, perhaps nothing was beyond repair. The next day, everything changed. With the fractured ones now tentatively mingling among their kin, the Kilari broke their silence on something they had never dared share before. A council of elders appeared from the deep jungle, bearing robes woven from living threadglass, eyes shimmering with swirling light. They moved like whispers of memory. And they brought a map. Not a traditional one. This was a pattern, alive, shifting, projected from a crystalline ord infused with pulsing rhythm. As it unfurled above the camp, it showed a lattice of energy veins winding through the planet. And at the heart of it all, a void. A chasm. The first break, one elder whispered in a harmony barely above the jungle's hum. The wound that cannot heal. Alina narrowed her eyes at the swirling rift. A planetary fracture. Worse, Merrick said, studying the energy fields. It's a tear in the planet's harmonic core. This whole ecosystem thrives on resonance. If that's collapsing, the jungle dies. The planet dies. The elder's harmonic tone quivered as he explained. Generations ago, something had shattered the natural pattern. A deep rupture that disseminated across the entire world. The Kilari had tried to seal it. They had built temples, sung to the rocks, fused light into form. But it was too fractured, too chaotic. We were taught to leave it alone, the elder said, that nothing could bind the wound. But now, the Grey Weavers had arrived. The elders wanted to try again. Not alone, but together, with the humans. Alina stared at the projection, jaw clenched. You want us to duct tape a planetary fault line? The elder hesitated, then nodded once. Marcus cracked his knuckles. Well, it wouldn't be the weirdest thing I've taped. They gathered what little material they had left. The humans were out of duct tape, but the Kilari had tried replicating it for days. Dozens of rolls now sat at the edge of the clearing, crude, unrefined, but full of potential. Marcus tested a few. Sticky, resilient, imperfect, but workable. We combined their material with our layering technique, he said. Mesh, lattice, Reinforcement spiral. It won't be pretty, but it'll hold long enough for resonance to stabilize. Alina nodded. We're going to need power and precision. The elders provided both. A caravan of levitating platforms arrived. Tools, harmonic stabilizers, and what appeared to be mobile forges. The Kilari carried song scrolls that adjusted vibrational fields at a distance, and at the rear of the caravan came the fractured ones, silent, steady, now wearing woven gray buns over their restored cores. They had come to help. The journey to the wound took most of the day. As they crested a final ridge, they saw it, a jagged scar in the land, glowing with a painful red-white pulse. Crystalline cliffs had broken and twisted, forming unnatural spirals. Lightning arced across fissures in slow-motion bursts. It was beautiful and terrifying. Merrick scanned it with the last of their working drones. Energy pressures building. This thing's on the edge of collapse. Alina turned to Marcus. How do we start? He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward, unrolling the first Kilari-forged hate strip and anchoring one end to a jutting shard of the earth. Then he looked up at the dozens of Kilari watching. He gestured. They understood. Together, they began. Human hands worked alongside crystalline ones, wrapping, layering, tuning harmonics. Voices sang while machines aligned. Fractured ones braced broken stone so the bindings could take. Elder chants infused the material with stabilizing frequencies. And all the while, Marcus and Alina guided the pattern, measuring, adjusting, repairing. Not with dominance, but with care. The wound began to pulse slower, deeper. The high-pitched whine that had haunted the area since they arrived faded into a gentle, constant hum. Then, in a moment of silence, the final strip was laid. The jungle shuddered, and then it breathed. Color returned to the trees. The broken cliffs shifted into stable spirals. Light surged through the earth like veins reconnecting to a beating heart. The wound was sealed, not permanently, but held, bound. The first break, mended not by force, but by trust. The jungle woke like a creature from a deep slumber. Birdsong returned, weaving through the crystal leaves in shimmering waves. The fractured earth, once a jagged scar, now hummed with steady life. The great wound, the first break, had been sealed, held together by layers of human duct tape and Kilari harmonic binding. The camp was quiet, but heavy with meaning. The Kilari gathered around Marcus, Alina, and Merrick, their glowing forms flickering gently in the dawn light. The fractured ones stood among them, no longer broken shadows, but proud binders of their own wounds. An elder stepped forward, holding a small, intricate box carved from living crystal. Its surfaces reflected shifting patterns of light, almost like it breathed. We offer this, the elder's voice rippled through the air, to those who mended what was thought impossible. Marcus took the box carefully. Inside was a single strip of shimmering tape, not ordinary duct tape, but woven with strands of Kilari crystal and Earth's polymer. It was stronger, lighter, a symbol of their union. Alina looked at the assembled crowd. This is more than tape, she said softly. It's a promise. A promise that broken things can be made whole. That cultures, no matter how different, can come together. That even the smallest, simplest idea, sticking things together, can change the course of a world. Days later, the wanderer lifted off from the jungle clearing. The Kilari watched as the ship rose, their bodies shimmering in farewell. Merrick leaned on the railing, staring down at the lush green canopy below. You ever think a roll of duct tape could start a revolution? Marcus smiled, holding the crystal-woven strip in his palm. It's not the tape, it's what you do with it. Alina checked their logs one last time. Data on the wound's stabilization, the healing of the fractured ones, and the burgeoning culture of gray weavers, all recorded for anyone who might come after them. Let's make sure this story gets told, she said. The jungle below seemed to sing its own thanks, a soft harmonic wave that drifted through the stars. In the end, the Grey Weavers became legend, a testament to human ingenuity, stubbornness, and hope. For sometimes, the greatest magic isn't spells or technology. It's the will to hold broken things together, one strip at a time.